Hello, everyone. We are here to celebrate 1 year of doing this story with you guys. How about that? I'm excited. I'm glad that people have been enjoying this for as long as they have. I'm glad that we've definitely got some new regulars out of this, which has been really cool to see. And it's also been good to see some of Old Faithful's return from my other stories. Thank you all for coming out to enjoy the story. We've been having a lot of fun doing it. Now I know normally this is the part where we do reviews concerning the last chapter, but because we were releasing this chapter so close to the previous one, we are just going to skip that one for now, and we'll just do the reviews for all chapters in the next video. And we'll pretty much get right into the next audio chapter to celebrate the 1 year anniversary of Your Hero Academia, and we will do the behind the scenes as usual after the audio chapter, but after that, I prepared a little something extra for you guys, and I hope you will enjoy it. So we'll be right back.
2 pillars. On a scale of 1 to dead, how grounded are we? Kurai asked wearily as he stared bleakly into his phone screen. It was the early afternoon, less than 8 hours after the final battle atop the research and development tower had reached its explosive conclusion. That depends, his mother answered with thin lips. Are you both alive? Yes, he nodded. Did you break any laws? Bent, but not broken, no. Will your brother ever recover? Kurai paused here. He knew that his mother's anger was a veil behind which she was concealing her concern, but he didn't want to be the one to let her know how bad the situation really was. His parents had been alerted to the crisis and the fact that it had passed as soon as he and Akarui were admitted to the hospital, though they hadn't been given full details just yet. That duty had fallen to Kurai when his mother video called him. Kurai, answer me, the woman demanded. What happened to Akarui? He forced his quirk into overdrive with the device that he invented, Kurai answered weakly. At first I thought he might not make it, but our hospital bills are being taken care of by Professor Shield of all people. He made sure that we're receiving the best care that Island has to offer. He chose not to disclose the fact that the man was in the same hospital with a police detail stationed outside of his room at all times. He did what? His mother practically spat. Does he have a death wish? He wanted the rest of us to live, Mom, the boy said tiredly. Without him, we might not have made it to the top to stop the villains and free the other heroes. Look, I'm mad at him too. The important thing is he'll survive, but the tumor has grown and it's going to cause him more problems in the future. Such as? He lost his ability to talk, Kurai admitted, and his heart sunk as his mother's face fell. Unfortunately, he wasn't even done with the bad news. He can move his hands and arms okay, but he can't walk and he has trouble holding his neck up. To put it bluntly, his motor capabilities are severely diminished to the point where he's going to need a wheelchair to get around. All Might. His mother gasped, her angry mask crumbling into despair. My baby boy. Mom, I'm sorry, Kurai said, tears stinging at his own eyes. I told him to stay behind while me and the others went, but he wouldn't listen. Now I know I should have just knocked him out or argued harder, but I... His shoulders began to shake, jostling the phone as he cried in frustration and sorrow. Son, listen to me, his mother said, her voice still trembling, but coming through clearly. Forcing himself to take in deep breaths in an attempt to calm his racing heart and swallow the stone lodged in his throat, he waited until he was certain that he could speak without his voice breaking. I'm listening, he mumbled as he stared at his mom through bleary eyes. I don't know exactly what happened over there, and this isn't the first time that I've been worried about the men in our family going into situations where they might not come back, she said, sounding as though she too were barely in control of her voice. I made peace with the fact that you and your father would face peril in the field that you chose. I also know that I can't blame you for what has happened to Akarui, because our family is unfortunately aware of the fact that not everyone can be saved. But I'm a hero, Kurai protested as his eyes stung again. I'm supposed to be there so that whatever happened to Uncle Shiro never happens to anyone in front of me, ever again. Son, you can't think that you can save everyone, his mother told him sternly. You will only be setting yourself up for failure with that mindset. But not even All Might could have saved your brother from his own choices, the woman interrupted. You said as much yourself. But you cannot let your brother's sacrifice be in vain. If you begin to stray from the path that you set out on, the path that he made sure you would continue to walk, you dishonor his gift to you and you disgrace yourself. My head knows that, Mom, Kurai replied bitterly. But my heart still hurts and I can't stop thinking about the would-haves, could-haves, and should-haves. I won't give up on becoming a hero for reasons beyond our family's sacrifices, but this failure is going to haunt me for the rest of my life. I don't know that I can be the same hero that I set out to be after this. Kurai, his mother said firmly, will the villain that caused this face justice? Yes, he nodded slowly. Then your job as a hero has been done, she asserted. I won't bother telling you that you're not a real hero because you don't have a license, because I know that isn't true. You've been through more horror than even most pros will see in their careers, and you have emerged for the stronger each time. You will learn and grow from this too. I believe that. But what will I grow into, Mom? The boy asked with a trembling voice. Into someone that your father, brother, and I will continue to love and support, she answered him with a tiny smile. Now, I need to tell your father the news, but I'll call you again tonight. Don't hesitate to call us if there's any change with your brother or if you just need someone to talk to. Yes, ma'am, he mumbled. Love you. I love you and your brother both, she replied gently. Say hello to him for me. With that, the call disconnected, and Kurai let the phone fall into his lap, feeling utterly exhausted despite his lack of activity for the day. He was in his own room, having been admitted due to the fact that his quirk was registered in I-Island's databanks as high risk for self-harm. The fact that Akarui's device had successfully altered his powers was not known, and Kurai figured that a few days under surveillance couldn't hurt anything, especially since it was his brain that had been messed with. Fortunately for him, though, he hadn't felt any negative effects from his quirk, and the scans on his brain thus far had shown nothing in the way of damage, psychological or physical. Not too sure that it won't come out with some kind of chronic depression after this, but I suppose only time will tell, he thought tiredly. Any hopes of being able to sleep were soon dashed when he heard a knock at the door, followed by Midoriya's voice saying, Hikari? Is it okay if I come in? I've got a visitor for you. Guess I can have visitors now. Based on the nervous tone that the boy was using, Kurai had a pretty good idea of who was with him. Grunting as he straightened himself on the hospital bed, he answered, Sure, come in. The door to his room slid open to admit his friend, followed by the skeletal figure that he had seen wearing All Might's costume right after the defeat of the villain that had captured David's shield. Looking at the man and seeing his withered body, Kurai found it almost impossible to believe that he was still looking at the symbol of peace. Hello, sir, he said respectfully with an inclination of his head. How are you? All things considered, fine, the shrunken man answered, his breathing slightly ragged. How are you, young Hikari? His voice was like a hollowed-out, more brittle version of the booming tones that Kurai was used to hearing from his teacher. I'm actually doing well, but the doctors want to keep me for observation, make sure there's no damage done to my mind from my quirk, he replied evenly. Nothing so far. Good, good, All Might replied, moving to sit by his bedside, Izuku following him uncertainly. Looking at his student with sunken eyes, he cleared his throat before saying, I'll get down to addressing the elephant in the room, young Hikari. As you've probably guessed by now, I'm rapidly losing my powers. Pretty soon I won't be able to be the symbol of peace anymore. And Midoriya is your successor, Kurai guessed, startling the green-haired boy. He has a power like yours and you're training him to replace you, right? How did you... I've had a little time to think while I've been sitting here, Kurai shrugged. It was mostly stuff that I dismissed when it was happening, but now I realized that the hints were there. Asui saying that your power was similar to All Might's, you talking about how hard it was to control, the number one hero taking such an interest in you from the beginning of the year. He shrugged again before saying, I'm honestly a little disappointed in myself for not realizing it sooner. We've been trying to keep it under wraps, the weakened hero told him. You're only half right about his powers, though. His abilities aren't just similar to mine. They are mine, along with the power built up and compiled by 7 others before me. Your power? Kurai repeated, taken aback. Are you saying that... How does he have your power? There are many kinds of different quirks in this world, All Might explained. But before I tell you about any more of it, though, I need to know something. That being, can you keep all of this to yourself? Given how hard you've worked to maintain the secret, I don't think it'd be right for me to share it with anyone, Kurai answered quickly. I haven't said anything to anyone so far, mostly because I've been trying to get my head around it for the first place. Not even to Ashido? Midoriya asked nervously. No, not even to her. Kurai answered, a little annoyed. You haven't told our Uraraka, have you? Or Ida? Or Todoroki? Well, no. There you go, he muttered. Just because she's my girlfriend doesn't mean I tell her everything. All right, I believe you, All Might said peaceably. I'll tell you the rest of the story so you know why it's important to keep this a secret. So, the hero told Kurai everything as quickly as he could. He told him about All for One and the power that he had unwittingly created through his brother, One for All. He told Kurai about how the villain ruled by stealing the quirks of others and creating mindless drones when he forced weaker people to take more than one quirk. He spoke of the fight that had lasted for generations and the sacrifice that his master had made for him, and how he had emerged triumphant finally against the old foe, or so he had thought. Despite his best efforts and the wound that it had cost him, All Might had not truly defeated his mortal enemy. Even now, All for One moved in the shadows as the puppet master of the League of Villains, seeking to destroy hero society and return control of the country to the hands of darkness. Soon, he revealed, it would fall to Midoriya, that's the ninth holder of his power, to stand up to All for One. Here at last, Kurai spoke up. You're expecting a high schooler to face off against a guy that's been around for nearly 200 years, put a hole in your gut, and survived your best attempts to pulp him? He asked in disbelief. Forgive my impertinence, All Might, but this is crazy. You can't actually expect Midoriya to be able to beat this guy as he is. No offense. The last part was aimed at his friend, who shrugged in response. None taken, he answered, but that's why I'm training as hard as I can. I have to master One for All before this guy comes back to power. I have to become a pillar of justice like All Might. Kurai frowned and said, There's an old proverb about fighting that I think fits here. He who stands like a pillar in battle will crumble. The one who bends like a tree will be triumphant. What does that mean? Midoriya asked. It means that if you stand alone, you're going to end up just like All Might, Kurai said with a frown. You'll end up like Akarui. Both of them tried to do everything on their own, take everyone's burdens onto their shoulders. Look where it got them. Now Midoriya was mad. Don't talk about All Might like... He's right. All Might conceded warily, surprising his protege. I tried to stop All for One on my own, but I couldn't. Even with the power handed down to me from the men and women that gave their lives to safeguard it, I couldn't fulfill my duty. Now there are Nomu and the League running around, causing pain and suffering for you. The next generation, all because I tried to defeat him alone. But All Might, Midoriya murmured, you couldn't have known things would turn out this way. It's not your fault. That may be, but you and your peers are paying for the consequences of my mistakes. The older man replied in kind. Which is why, even though it wouldn't have been my first choice, I'm glad that young Hikari knows about all of this. He's already helped you to gain control of One for All better than I could have. Now, maybe he can be of even more help to you. If, Kurai muttered with a wince. You would have been better asking Akarui to help. Sure, I know how to punch stuff, but with all this insanity. He shook his head in despair before saying, I'll keep your secret, and I'll even help you if you ask it of me, but I can't help but feel like I'm in over my head. Join the club. Midoriya laughed nervously. But it's not like we have to fight All for One right away. He's right. The man rarely moves in a direct fashion. All Might nodded. The only reason I was able to face him in open battle was because I took out so many of his operations that he had no choice but to try and stop me himself. And here he locked his deadened blue eyes with his student before adding, People have been saying that you could be the next symbol of peace, young Hikari. I didn't think much about that until now because I was so fixated on helping young Midoriya. But after last night, I can see it. The quirks All for One and One for All aren't the end-all be-all in terms of strength. Your power is remarkable, make no mistake. With the proper training, you two could finally defeat my old enemy. I truly believe that. Well, one of us has to, Kurai grumbled. Hikari? Look, like I said, I'll help you if you ask me to, he told them both. I understand that the stakes are too high for me to walk away from it. But don't get me wrong, I'm not exactly thrilled at the prospect of fighting what All Might has described, especially given what happened to him. I've dedicated my life to becoming a hero that people need, and if this is what they need, I will do it. But I nearly lost my brother, and it's eating me up. I can't imagine what it'll do to my family if I die fighting All for One. I know it'd kill my mom if I died, Midoriya said sympathetically. But the world needs us, Hikari. It needs us to be the symbols of hope and peace that can stand up to evil like this and win. Just like we did with the villain last night. Kurai sighed as he leaned back into his pillows and muttered, You're probably right, but just give me some time to take all this in. Yesterday was bad enough, and now I have to get used to the idea of quirks that being transferred, monsters that used to be people, and immortal madmen that'll do anything to get back their empire. I understand. All Might nodded as he slowly stood up. For now, I'm just grateful that you're agreeing to keep our secret. Speaking of which, who else knows about this? Kurai asked. Or is it just us? The principal, recovery girl, a friend of mine from the police force in Gran Torino, the hero answered. He was a friend of my master and he helped me gain control of One for All when I was a student at UA. Got it. The boy sighed tiredly. I'm surprised that Professor Shield didn't know, though. Explains why he made that device, I guess. He didn't want you to lose your power, right? That'll happen one day no matter what I do to try to hold it off. All Might shrugged. Until then, I'll do my best to keep you both safe. So that when the time is right, you can both tell the world that you will be there, as twin pillars of justice to uphold the peace. A pillar crumbles beneath too much weight, Kurai reminded them in a dry tone. But two working together can hold up what would crush one. All Might countered as he reached the door. Get some rest, young Hikari. You're going to need it before you go on the training camp next week. Yes, sir. Since he had apparently been cleared for visitors, he texted Mina to let her know that she could come and see him. However, he was surprised when she bolted into his room less than 5 minutes after he had sent the text. Thank God you're okay, she exclaimed as she hugged him tightly, running her fingers through his hair as if to reassure herself that he was real. When you got airlifted with the others in the medical helicopter, I was worried that Akarui's gizmo must have gone wrong. No, I'm okay, Kurai said in a muffled voice, his face currently being smothered by his girlfriend's shoulder. Whatever he did, it worked. There's no recoil from my quirk like I would have had before. Also, can I breathe? Sorry, the pink girl said as she stepped back just far enough to let him inhale fresh air. I just needed to hold on to you for a sec. As she looked the tired boy up and down, she added in a more subdued tone, How is your brother? Kurai lowered his gaze and gave her the same report he'd been forced to give his mother. After he finished summarizing the situation, he added, Because the tumor has grown so fast, we don't know how long it'll be before his motor functions are completely crippled. That's not even taking into account that he probably won't live past his early 20s, and that's if he's lucky. Mina's caramel eyes watered as she looked upon the defeated young hero before she embraced him again. I'm so sorry, she told him. I didn't keep him safe like I was supposed to. I let you both down. She looked like she wanted to throw up when she added, Oh, what am I going to say to your parents? I already talked to my mom to tell her how everything happened, he replied as he gripped her arm for comfort. She won't hold you accountable, nor will Dad. And for what it's worth, I don't blame you either. I know, she sniffed, but I'll still blame myself anyway. Just promise me something, Kurai told her, knowing it would be useless to try and talk her out of such a notion, especially when he was feeling the exact same way. Don't let this stop you from becoming the hero I know you can be. I won't, she promised swiftly. I gotta get even stronger so I don't have to rely on people like Akarui to save others. People that'll get hurt because of a mistake I made. Relieved, Kurai nuzzled her cheek with his own as he murmured, I hope you'll still rely on me, though. I get the feeling I'm going to be leaning on you for support a lot more from now on. Mina kissed the top of his head before answering, I'll lend you my support for as long as you need it. I promise. With Akarui still in intensive care, Kurai wound up receiving most of his classmates as visitors once word got out that he was allowed to have guests. They could only visit in pairs as Mina refused to leave his side, but by the end of the day he had been given well wishes from everyone in their class, with the exception of Bakugo, who declined to visit. When Ida came in alone, Kurai mentally braced himself for a lecture, as he knew that the class rep had been against the plan to alter his quirk. However, much to his surprise, his old friend simply sat down on one of the guest chairs and said, I heard that your health remains in its prime despite the exertions of your fight on the rooftop. Yeah, he answered cautiously, still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Ina must have picked up on this, though, because he held up a hand and said, I've learned by now not to argue with you about events after the fact. I'm just glad that you're okay and that Akarui will live. For amateur heroes, we could have done a lot worse for ourselves. That's true, Kurai admitted, relaxing just a little bit. Everyone's alive, and other than my brother, there's no lasting injuries. Right? Only the villain that Akarui maimed, Ida replied. Due to the lack of physical evidence and the fact that the man was further injured while his boss was tearing up the tower, the authorities are labeling the whole thing as an accident, despite the villain's protests to the contrary. Kurai raised an eyebrow at the older boy before asking, And you're okay with that? I think that Akarui did what he had to do out of self-defense, Ida answered him. And even if he were somehow found guilty by a jury, he will be suffering more than enough for the rest of his life. More than I would wish on anyone. Kurai looked into the eyes of his peers and saw Tensei reflected therein. He sees his brother in Akarui now, he realized. You're already a better hero than I'll ever be, Ida said suddenly, surprising the couple. Ida, what are you... When this happened to my brother, all I could think about was revenge, the tall student said to interrupt Mina. I felt as though not even a lifetime in jail would be enough to make Stain pay for what he took from my brother. In my anger, I forgot the principles that make a hero, and even all the other people that the hero killer had hurt and killed. But just from talking to you, Kurai, I can tell the thought of revenge hasn't even crossed your mind. Kurai blinked in surprise a few times before he shrugged and asked, Who would I take revenge against? The villains are all in jail, and Akarui more or less did this to himself. And I'm definitely not about to wail on him anymore since he's already taken quite the beating. But you could have chosen to blame the villains alone, Ida pressed. The fact that you haven't means that you truly have the heart of a hero. Unlike me. Before Kurai could say anything on the matter, the young man straightened out his spectacles and mused, Since I lack the genuine heart of heroism, I'll just have to work even harder to mold myself into someone that is worthy of the name Ingenium. Kurai regarded him quietly for a moment before he said, Based on what you're saying and what I know about you, that name might fit you sooner than you think. Ida blinked in surprise before he reached out a hand to the other student and asked, Are we good then? Good as we're going to get for a while, I think, Kurai answered as he shook hands with the other boy. Thank you for looking after Akarui when I couldn't. It was my privilege and pleasure, even though I feel as though I failed in the end. Looking over at Mina, Ida then added, Please take good care of him, Ashido. He's irreplaceable. Don't gotta tell me that, she replied with a grin as he stood up to leave. But I'll make sure he's okay while we're here. Thanks for coming by, Ida. When the visiting hours were over, a nurse came into the room to tell Mina that it was time to go. Before she could leave, however, Kurai said in an exhausted voice, I want her to stay. She and the nurse looked at him with no small measure of surprise, causing him to add, I don't want to be alone tonight, not after what happened this morning. The nurse held up her hands in a gesture of helplessness as she said, Sir, the hospital regulations state that only family can spend the night. Well, one of my family members is up in the ICU where I can't be, and the others are an ocean away, Kurai said irritably. I am not spending the night alone, so unless you override the family-only crap, I will march myself right out of this hospital and refuse further treatment and observation. Sir, calm down, please, the nurse said nervously as Kurai's brow furrowed and his fists tightened. What you're asking for is above my station. I can't authorize her stay. Then get his doctor to make it happen, please, Mina said in a more reasonable tone before Kurai's sleepless irritation could get the better of him. If he needs someone to stay the night with him so that he feels better, I'm more than happy to do it. The nurse hesitated, but she moved toward the door and said, I'll be back in a little while. Since these are extenuating circumstances, we might be able to arrange something. As soon as the door closed, Kurai leaned back in the bed with a tired sigh, causing Mina to turn toward him with a concern on her face. Have you gotten any sleep since we came here? She asked him. No, he replied in a low voice. I tried to a few times before my mom called me, but she prompted him gently. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw Nomu, Shigaraki, Kurogiri, the villains from last night, he mumbled. I have nightmares every once in a while, but nothing like this. I feel like I'm not allowed to rest until I know for sure they won't be able to hurt anyone like they've hurt me. He let out a bitter bark of laughter at the thought before adding, Of course, that'll never happen, will it? Do you think that chronic nightmares are part of the way that your quirk got changed? Mina asked. I don't think so, but I'll ask Akarui the next time I see him, the boy mumbled tiredly. Wait, he can't talk. Yeah, but the nurse has said that he's able to move his hands well enough to write stuff, Kurai replied. He can still communicate to a degree. Any idea when he'll be allowed to have visitors? She inquired worriedly. Hopefully tomorrow, as long as he remains stable, he answered as she sat beside him on the bed again. Is that too much to hope for? Or does everything I'm involved in turn into a disaster? Not everything. Mina giggled as she bopped his head with her horns. I'm still here, and you're going to have a hard time getting rid of me, Buster. Good, he said with a peaceful smile as he closed his eyes. Without opening them, he asked, Promise you'll be here when I wake up? They'll have to get past my acid to keep me away from you, she said, causing him to smile again. Acid Queen is here to keep the mean nurses away from you. Now you're just patronizing me. I'm not. That same night, All Might sat alone in the open air, deep in thought as he gazed out of the dark ocean from the balcony of his hotel room. I wish I didn't have to involve children in the war that I failed to finish, he thought miserably, especially when young Hikari has already suffered at the hands of villainy from so early on in life. Looking up at the stars that shone brightly, he murmured, "How did you do it, Master? How did you bear the burden of knowing that you were training a child to fight a battle that you were destined to fail?" The stars, of course, gave no reply, and the weakened hero felt more alone than he had since he met Izuku Midoriya. Kurai stirred in his dreamless sleep, slowly becoming aware of a sensation outside the normal range of feelings that his body received whenever he returned to consciousness. It took him a minute, but he recognized that it was 3 senses in particular that were being triggered: touch, sound, and smell. There was a faint scent of strawberries coming from a soft warmth present on his left side, accompanied by a gentle whiffing sound that tickled his ear. It was dark in the hospital room, so it took a moment for his eyes to adjust, and when they did, he went very, very still. Mina was asleep next to him on the hospital bed, snoring softly from a cocoon made up of her own blanket. He felt his heartbeat accelerate, and his first instinct was to bolt upright out of bed. As he prepared to do just that, Mina's snoring stopped and she mumbled drowsily, "Move and I'll melt you." He froze in place before whispering, How long have you been here?" Based on the lack of light, he guessed that it was sometime in the middle of the night. No one besides the skeleton crew of the hospital would be up for a little while, so it seemed that they were being left to their own devices for the most part. "I don't know," she grumbled as she shifted a little closer to him, causing his face to heat up rapidly enough that he thought he might pass out. "Doctor gave me the green light to stay, though. Now go back to sleep. You're comfy." He wanted to protest, but he was really too tired to argue, especially when he realized that her presence had more or less caused him to enter a deeper sleep than he'd had in quite a while. There had been no pleasant dreams to speak of, but there were no nightmares haunting him either. He had been able to enter a state of true rest for the first time since the USJ incident, and he didn't have it in him to deny himself that kind of slumber. Besides, she was really cute, and she was going out of her way to make sure that he had a peace of mind for the evening, so who was he to stop her? Gradually, his heartbeat slowed down as he relaxed back into his pillows and allowed himself to enjoy the present company. At least we're under separate blankets, he thought with relief just before sleep claimed him again. And we're both too tired to do anything. "Hey, Kurai?" Mina mumbled, jerking him back from the brink of sleep. "Yeah?" He grunted, annoyed at having been kept from his rest. "Am I crazy for thinking that I'm falling in love with you?" she asked, hints of fear blended with her own exhaustion. For a second, Kurai expected himself to panic, pass out, or fall out of bed. When the moment had passed, and he had done none of those things, he found himself seriously considering her question, his sleepiness temporarily forgotten. "I don't think it's just the relief of surviving talking, if that's what you're thinking," the girl continued when he didn't answer, her nervousness seeming to grow. "And it's not the fact that we're sleeping in the same bed either. Not by itself, anyway. We've been through so much together, and I like who I am when I'm with you. I know you prefer to move slow, but I need you to know how I feel right now, or I think I'm going to explode." He let the silence stretch out for only a moment longer before he reached out from under the blanket and stroked her warm cheek with a fingertip. "You're not crazy," he replied softly. "And I don't care if it is the relief talking. I like who I am when I'm with you, too. I think I'd be crazy not to fall in love with a girl like you, Mina." "Am I dreaming?" she whispered after her breath caught. "I've got to be in a dream. The guy I fell for is saying he loves me?" It's a very nice dream, then." Kurai chuckled drowsily, his wariness beginning to return, despite his best efforts. "And if it is, I'll be sure to tell you about it in the morning." "You promise?" she asked him hopefully. "Yeah," he answered with a faint grin on his lips as he closed his eyes again. "But only if you let me go to sleep." "Gladly," she whispered as he heard her move. He then felt her lips on his brow before she settled back down and told him, "Good night, Kurai. Night, Mina." The next morning, as the rising sun crept into the boy's half-closed eyelids, he made a vow to himself. "I'll stand as a man of justice alongside Deku so that Mina and Akarui can live in a safer world," he decided. "One for all for one. League of Villains. You'll regret the next time you decide to cross paths with the rising pillars of peace and justice."
Oh man, that mom conversation.
Yeah?
Honestly, I was like impressed with her. I was like, dang, I would have been a hot mess. But she's a police officer's wife. She knows how to take a crisis in stride, even if it hurts.
Honestly, I feel like I kind of based her off of my mom is a military wife. My dad, at one point, he did have to be deployed out to the Middle East when the war on terror was happening. That was a pretty rough time for my family. But I feel like I kind of drew on that a little bit for this kind of conversation, because it's like, yes, these are hard times, and but it's probably harder for her than almost anybody else. But because she's mom, she has to be the one stepping up for this role.
I could definitely see your mom handling a situation similarly.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things where you gotta be strong and then have your meltdown later, because it's not the time.
Yeah. Also, I feel like we don't get enough in this story of the student's mom and dad's being like
emotionally regulated.
Emotionally regulated. Well, not just that. It's like, what do they think their kids are going to be doing? Yeah. Like, I get that was one thing that kind of annoyed me about Deku's mom. It's like, yes, I understand that's her only son. Her husband isn't around a lot. He works overseas or something. Like, he's basically all she's got. Mm-hmm. But it's like, he's going into the hero world. What do you think he's going to be doing?
But that's the thing. I think that I think as a mom, if I was in that situation, part of me would be relieved, because I'd be like, well, he can't actually do that, even though he wants to, and that's sad. But at least he'll be safe, and he's not going to be pursuing a career. And then all of a sudden it gets dropped on her. Oh no, he is going to be putting his life at risk, even though, and then, he doesn't.
I'm talking about the bit where they were asking for permission to move them into the dorms, and she was like, no, I'm not going to let him go back to UA. And everybody's like, what are you doing? Because by then it's like, he'd been through the USJ attack. There'd been things that happened in Osu. He's already been through a couple of things, and then it suddenly became too much for it. And I know, everybody has a breaking point, but it's just kind of like, it keeps coming back to that whole thing of it's like, this is his decision to pursue this, and B, it's like, what did you think he was going to be doing? Did you think that he was going to be playing traffic cop?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I can relate to Deku's mom. She can be super over the top dramatic and a little much, but I could totally get that. And that's the thing. They're kids. And so if she's concerned that, I don't know. I think it's different when an adult makes a decision to put their lives in danger and to pursue a career like that. Mm-hmm. But when it's your child, I think that would be very difficult. And so, but again, with this mom, it's different. She knows her boys, she knows this is what they're meant for.
Yeah.
Or,
what they've chosen to do. And she's had time to get used to it, with her husband, being in the position that he is. But yeah, I thought that was an important conversation to have. Honestly, there have been some things that happen where it's like, I almost didn't do it, but this, ever since I had the idea to injure Akarui in this way and have Kurai come out as he did on top of this whole ordeal, I knew that he needed to have a conversation with his mom about it. Because there's just some situations where it's just this major thing happened. You gotta talk to your mom about it.
You can't just gloss over that with your family. That's a family situation. So we have the mom conversation, then Deku and All Might come in. Yep.
So, building on that bombshell that got dropped at the end of the last chapter, Kurai kind of mentions, so yeah, you're training under him, you're going to take over his spot, right? And they're like, how'd you figure that out? He tells them, well, it was there, and kind of silly that I didn't notice it, but unlike Akarui, he didn't make the connection that, so both brothers found out last chapter, but Kurai didn't, in different ways, and Kurai didn't make the connection that Deku was responsible for All Might losing his power.
Yeah, he was.
But he now has the full story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of the full story, what'd you think of his reaction to it?
Oh, man. Well, that's the thing. Deku finds out probably on the best day of his life because he gets a quirk. Mm-hmm. And so Deku's pumped when he finds out. But, Hikari's going in totally crushed. And then he finds out that there's this crazy power out there that Deku has to face, and now he's expected to face it too, and he knows he has to...
Because he has the power to make it happen.
He has to, stand up, and he has to take responsibility also and help his friends, but it's not something that he's really looking forward to, because it's like, you know, he just had suffered a serious loss, and now he's feeling overwhelmed.
When I read you the chapter, you kind of said that it felt like he was almost like resentful, but I would say that it's more
That's
like...
That's not what I said.
No?
I said it was almost like begrudgingly, because it's my gosh, like, you know, and I don't think it's, I don't think...
I felt like it was more like resignedly.
There you go. That's a better word because it's like, you know what, there's nothing he can do. Like, now he's one of the few people that know about this big secret, and of course he has to do his part.
You know, Deku's his friend. He wants to help. He wants to help him, but like at the same time, he's just like, y'all are nuts.
Yeah, he's like, dang, okay, wow, this is great. We're all great.
It's like, this is fun. It's like he's like that meme where it's like it's like that dog sitting in a room on fire, and he's just like, this is fine.
Yeah, we found the pessimist character. You know, there's always a little bit of a pessimistic attitude in your protagonist.
I think anybody's a pessimist given the right circumstances.
Yeah, but we finally got there with him.
He's been a pessimist from the beginning too. Remember, Mina was making fun of it when they first met. One of the first things she says to him, she's like, "Have you ever heard of optimism?"
Yeah.
And like he's loosened up a fair amount, largely to her influence, I would say. But
he's also realistic.
He's a real from the beginning. He's like, look, I'm a cop's kid. Being in that kind of family, you know, your eyes are open to a lot of dark truths of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we have the whole one for all conversation.
Mm-hmm. Kurai agrees to do his part when the time comes if they need him.
Mm-hmm. And then friends come in and visit. Then we have the Mina.
No. With the Ida first.
Oh, Ida. Yeah, That's right.
I know you guys have been worried about their relationship for a while. And it's like, it's clearly not where it was still, but you could definitely call them friends again at this point.
They're good.
They
just need to, I mean, I think anytime you go through a rough patch with a friend, you need to, you know, warm up again.
Yes.
But they're finally at a point where they see eye to eye, they're on the same page, you know, they both know that they care about each other.
Yeah.
And, you know, we can move forward and be good, which is nice.
Yep. So that can finally...
So, yes.
Yep.
There you go. Happy?
There you go. Happy? You happy?
No, I thought it was...
I can dump a whole lot of stuff on you guys, but you always got to give me credit where I always give you a little thing at the end where it's like, hey, this is nice. I can be okay with this.
No, I think it was really cool the way you did it, though, because Ida can come full circle and be like, okay, I get where you're coming from now.
Yeah.
And, you know...
There's that empathy.
Yeah. And he had to... You know, I think he's one of those personalities who has to learn by experiencing it and from a different perspective. And he really had to. He was forced to in this situation.
Yeah. And
Hikari didn't even occur to him that there were similarities in their situations.
To be fair, he's had a pretty rough day.
Yeah, but
he's just like, I never saw the similarities. What?
Yeah, but it's cool that they're both ready to move forward with their friendship again, which is great.
And then there was
then all the gushy butterflies and cuteness from Mina.
I tried to plan it out so that they would get to the I love you scene like around the 1 year, and I'm glad that I managed to make it land on the mark. Because I thought that would be kind of fun to like show like how far like it's a highlight of like all of them have come a fair way like over the course of the story, like and in different ways. You know, Kurai at the beginning he's just like, don't talk to me, or like
Mr. Awkward,
or like yeah. Well, I mean, his best friend was Ida growing up. What are you gonna do? And now he's good for. He's got a handful of people who like he can call really good friends. He's in on this huge secret. He's like, he's not psyched about it, but he's ready to save the world. Sorry, technical difficulties there for a second. Let's see. I think I was talking about, let's see. So we're talking about kind of originals versus my version. I was talking about Deku, like he seems a little bit more confident in this version, like even if ever so slightly. I mean, although I don't know how high of a benchmark that is because he's not very self-confident to begin with. But he's got someone extra in his corner.
Yeah.
Like, and he has from the beginning. Like, even though Kurai didn't know like stakes of what he was getting himself involved in, like him helping Deku gain control of his power earlier on, and like more accurately hone full cowling, has definitely been a big confidence booster for Deku. It helped him go further in the sports festival and all that. He actually placed a bronze medal. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Like, he, I guess there's a little bit more trust in Izuku in this one too, and like, and that sounds kind of strange, but it's like, he has, like, at this point, like, up to the anime, which is all I've seen, he hasn't trusted anyone enough to tell them about One for All, you know, other than Bakugo, and that was kind of an accident because he just can't keep his mouth shut when he's scared. But this is different because it's like he probably could have just passed it off as like, oh yeah, you know, All Might's sick, and he could have like not mentioned his part in it at all. Like, even if Kurai said, you're training to be his replacement, right? They could have just left it at, yeah, he's got a similar power. He chose to be like, actually, you know, this is All Might's power. Sorry about the sniffling, guys. My allergies are killing me.
Not COVID.
What was I gonna say? You were saying we got some more character development from Yairozu, I think.
I think that, I mean, we just don't get to see a lot from her in the show as far as her personality, and like, I think we've got...
I want to know why she wanted to become a hero.
Yeah, and I hope we get to see more of her in the coming seasons, but I think in your version, we definitely, because we get to know her a little bit better through the other characters, we get to get a little closer to her, and even Kaminari. Like,
Kaminari?
He has some moments in the last couple of chapters where he's really speaking up and making solid points. It's like, dude,
it's like, you don't expect that from the dumb guy, right?
Look at you.
Although, I have to admit, one of the main reasons that I had him interact with Akarui was just so Akarui would have someone to make fun of.
Yeah.
It's like, you look like you belong to the quirky bachelor, but hey, the appearances can be deceiving. Kaminari's just like, why me?
But I'm trying to think if there's any other characters who are really different. Of course, Ida's a little bit more flexible.
A little bit, yeah.
Ever so slightly.
Yeah, he was forced to. So yeah, like instead of being left to, so like one of the big differences is like everyone in the class knows about Stain and his confrontation with him at this point because Kurai got it out of him in front of the whole class.
Yeah. And so he's really having to recognize and face his demons in that area. And just like, he knows that his mistake is out there. And he's having to just own it and move forward. Yep.
Yeah, and I thought that, like, and I like Ida's character. He's great. But I just felt like with this dynamic with Kurai, I felt like it deserved a little more. And I would like to think that, and it seems like everybody's kind of responded to that fairly well. I'm trying to think, like, what else has changed? Like, what else has majorly changed, like, over the year that I've done this story?
Gosh, dang, I don't know. I mean, of course, we have this whole new Mina that we don't get to meet.
How so? I feel like her personality is pretty.
Yeah, but we
consistent.
don't get to see this, like, because in the show, you see this super, like, spunky, she's on it, she's really good at making friends and communicating with people and getting
a little bit of a
busybody.
busybody.
Little bit, but no, I don't see it as that. I think that
I think that's a little bit more on the behind the scenes stuff. She's kind of like she's kind of the class gossip.
I guess that's
like,
not where I was going with that at all.
No, okay, sorry.
I don't see it that way at all. I haven't seen her do that. No, what I've seen from Mina is that, I mean, she's a good, like, she's really good at making friends with people.
Yes, definitely.
And she's really good at connecting people.
I wasn't trying to diss on her or anything. I was just like trying.
Yeah,
I was just trying to remember like what I knew about her, like from what I've read.
I can't think of that being.
Maybe that becomes more apparent. Maybe that becomes more apparent in later seasons or something.
Okay.
I don't know.
But it's neat to see this vulnerable side to her because she's really falling for him, and I don't know. It's just for her to have somebody who's depending on her in this way.
Somebody, like, to me, it's like somebody who's that confident on the outside, like, has to have some serious self-confidence issues. Like, or they had at least at one point.
At one point.
And I feel like her relationship with Kurai was a good way to explore that, because like she kind of tells him toward the beginning, she kind of tells him, she's like, yeah, like she's like, yeah, I know I have my looks going for me, but at the same time they're also like, they kind of
weird.
Yeah. She's like, I don't know if I'm too crazy about him. And he's like, well, I like it. Yeah, like that's not how the conversation goes entirely.
Totally
but
different wavelengths when it comes to Mina's character development.
Are we?
Yeah. That's okay.
I mean, multifaceted characters.
Yes, that's a good thing.
That's what I'm trying to... I mean,
good thing.
Like, Kurai is the main character, and those who are most closely associated with him, like, I'm trying to explore... Yeah, I'm trying to explore their personalities more.
Seems the same.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
She hasn't changed a whole lot.
Yeah, she's not, like... Okay, so, like, Kurai's close with Deku, and with Yairozu, Todoroki, and Mina. Like, and Ida. Like, those are the 5 I'd say he's close to, but...
Todoroki change a whole lot.
Todoroki, not a whole lot, but, like, there's obviously this camaraderie between him and Kurai. Like, they're some of each other's first choices of backup when it comes to it. But his personality hasn't changed too much. But, like, Uraraka, like, he is good friends with her good friends. Like, they haven't had a whole lot of opportunity to, like, really interact directly. But that will change coming up in the next arcs.
Yeah, so what we have to look forward to is training camp.
We do have that to look forward to.
And I don't know how much we're giving away, but I know there are some new characters.
There are some new characters coming in, and before you guys can get to wondering exactly how that's working out, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys take a look at the clip of the intro video that I've made for Phase 2 of Your Hero Academia. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope you guys continue to enjoy this story over the next year and for however long it continues. It's been so cool hanging out with you guys, and this is a great, great project to be working on. Thank you so much for making it Plus Ultra, Laugh at me. Plus Ultra!
The blue spruce is killing you, man.